Vice Mayor Jan-Michelle Lemon Kearney. We have our Mayor Aftab Puraval here who's going to make opening remarks. Home ownership is so important. Home ownership helps you to build generational wealth. It makes your children healthier. They do better in school. You end up with equity so that you can send them to college or start a business or go on vacation, whatever you'd like. It gives you stability. And so we really, really want to increase home ownership. And we're talking affordable home ownership. Affordable housing doesn't just mean rental, it also means affordable home ownership. And so we have a lot of great partners here today that you're going to hear from. We encourage you to make this informal. When you feel like getting some pizza or something to drink, just hop up, go on back. We're not going to take breaks, so if you need a break, just take a break, and we have lots of folks around the side, and they're going to talk to you either during or afterwards. And so we just want you to get a lot of information. And you know, as we were saying, whether you're ready to buy a home today, or it's a faraway dream, or you think, I can never own a home, we want you to get the information you need so that we can really, really increase home ownership.
We have literally put our money where our mouth is. Increasing the Affordable Housing Trust Fund to $57 million, the most money ever put in that trust fund, putting together a substantial and recurring stream of revenue towards the trust fund year over year to the tune of $1 to $2.5 million every year, up to $5 million, to make sure that the resources are out there for folks to get access to provide the gap funding that they need in order to build more affordable housing or become homeowners themselves. The first thing that the Vice Mayor and I need to do is hear from all of you. Hear from folks in the community, in Price Hill and the other 51 neighborhoods who are living it every single day, so that we can understand what your challenges are, what your obstacles are, what your hopes and what your dreams are, so that together we can fashion solutions to increase those numbers and get you into homes. That's why we're here, to learn from you.
If you're not building wealth, if you're not passing wealth to your children, then everyone is starting on an uneven playing field with those people who do have these opportunities and have wealth being passed to them. So, like in my family, we didn't have a lot of wealth when I was a child, but my parents bought a home. You know, they were able to take the equity in that home, and my dad was able to take his business full time instead of having to work. So it changed the trajectory of what opportunities came to my family. That's something that within homeownership you can do if you don't have a lot of money in order to invest in a business or start your own business or invest in the stock market. But you can use the building of wealth through your home to give that opportunity to yourself and your grandchildren and your children. One of the main things that I do for the bank is that I help people get ready. So pre-qualification is extremely important so that you know what steps you need to take. So right now, as everybody may know, it's a very tough market to be able to buy a home. But it's a great opportunity to take advantage of what we have available to us to get ready. So that's where pre-qualification comes in. So if you meet with a lender, we can sit down with you, we can discuss what opportunities you have, what obstacles you have, and we can find out exactly what it is that you need to do to prepare for home ownership. So when you meet with a lender, you're going to need to talk about your work history. You'll need 2 years worth of work history. When you meet with the lender, you'll need to talk about your address history, talk about your credit history. And sometimes when I meet someone, we have to develop credit. So we need to be able to start with a secured credit card or other lines of credit to be able to develop that credit history. So the stance that I take with all the clients that we work with is sometimes we have to say, not now, but we don't want to say no. We want to show the people exactly what it is that they need to do to prepare for this so they can take advantage of this wealth building tool. So, so some of the benefits of homeownership too is that a lot of people have struggles with their landlord. You know, when you're the homeowner, you can fix the problems with your house. You don't have to wait. You know, also you have some tax advantages sometimes. You need to consult a tax advisor for that. But you can do energy efficient improvements and things like that that can also give you tax deductions. Pre-approval is a system of getting approved prior to purchasing a home where you take a complete file and you send it down to underwriting so that they can review all the documentation that you're going to need and review all of the different things that get you qualified for the loan and show those things. Now, that is fairly inflexible because once you send it down there, it makes a decision, whereas a pre-qualification is something that's done by the originator usually and has a lot of flexibility. So it's sent through the automated underwriting system. The file is reviewed by a qualified person. All of the information is checked. We look at the credit, and then we were able to qualify you, and based on that for what payment you can qualify for, and then associate that with different houses. We can run different scenarios for those different houses to make sure that you qualify for individual things like that.
Talking about credit. Credit is such an important part of the home buying process. What is credit? Credit is money you borrow that you plan to repay. There's a fee for borrowing that money. It allows you to make purchases without having the money to pay the entire thing at once. So when we're figuring out if we're ready to buy, we're looking at the 4 C's of credit: capital, capacity, character, and collateral. Capital are your net assets, your worth. Your capacity: do you have more income than you have expenses each month to cover your expenses? Character: how have you handled credit in the past? Have you paid your bills on time? Have you managed your outstanding debts properly? And your collateral, that's what you put up. So in this case, your house would be the collateral for your loan. So when should you use credit? Here are some questions that you should ask. How much do I have to pay to borrow this money? Is this purchase a need or a want? And when we're preparing for the home buying process and we're looking at our spending plans, we need to prioritize and figure out what is a need, what is a want, and do we need to make adjustments? Figuring out if that item that we're purchasing on credit using somebody else's money, will that item last longer than the time it takes to pay the item off? And how will these payments for this new loan affect my monthly spending plan? Because if you don't have enough income coming in, it could affect other expenses that you have. So some disadvantages of using credit. When you make a purchase, you're using credit, you commit to using future income to repay that loan. Credit can sometimes tempt us to spend more than what we're able to repay. Oh, I'll just put it on my credit card and I'll pay it off later. And we keep paying the minimum payment and our debt keeps going up, and we get ourselves in a situation. Mismanaging credit can cause a negative credit history. And using credit does cost us money, so keep that in mind. So credit reports. How many people in here have seen their credit report? Okay, so a lot of people, great. So what's included on that credit report? Our payment history, how have we paid those creditors? The different types of accounts. So there's installment accounts, things like auto loans, student loans, furniture loans, where we pay the same amount each month until it's paid off. There's revolving accounts like our credit cards, where the amount can change each month that we owe, mortgages, and other debts that can be on there. The amount of debt we owe is going to show any public record items. Public record items are things like judgments, liens, bankruptcies, and inquiries. Who's looked at our credit? Too many people pulling your credit can affect your score and have a negative impact, so keep that in mind. Credit reports are used by lenders, insurance companies, employers, landlords, utility companies. So it's very important in the home buying process But having good credit is important for your financial stability long term. So how long do things remain on your credit report? So inquiries, people pulling your credit and taking a look at it, will stay on there for about 2 years. Public record items stay on there for 7 to 10 years. And old accounts are on there 7 years from the date of last activity. There are 3 major credit reporting agencies: Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian. Each of your credit bureaus will provide you 1 free credit report annually. So until the middle of April, you can actually go and check it weekly at annualcreditreport.com. So I encourage you to go there, check your credit, make sure there are no mistakes or errors, know what you're dealing with, so that you can get out ahead of it in case you have issues. And sometimes mistakes happen. The people reporting and putting the information on are human, so if there are mistakes, get them corrected. So your credit score, the magic number, people always say, my credit score is this. I checked Credit Karma. I checked this place. Oh, I had someone pull it. So what makes up your credit score? So 35% is within your control. It's your payment history. Are you paying your bills on time? And that means paying at least the minimum amount each month. 30% is how much you owe, your outstanding balances. So not spending up to your limit, keeping those balances in check. So 65% of your score is completely within your control, so keep that in mind. 15% is the length of your credit history. How long have you had the credit? So it's important to build credit over time and maintain your old credit because that can help your score. 10% is your new credit. And the last 10% is the type of credit used. Do you have a credit mix? So why are credit scores important? They're used to predict how likely you are to pay back a loan on time. There are different scoring models out there. Most people are familiar with FICO. That's one of the most common ones. But there are different variations of the FICO score. There's over 20 of them. There's other scoring models like Beacon. So that's why sometimes there's a variation when you say, I got my score from this place or that place or your credit card, that they vary from when you walk into a lender to get a loan and they tell you it may be different. So just keep that in mind. There are different scoring models used depending on the application. So, if you have credit challenges, what are some things that you can do to improve your credit? Paying your bills on time is very important every time. Making at least the minimum payment by the due date. So if you're mailing your payment in, making sure you mail it ahead of time. If you're paying it online, that you do that payment a day ahead of time so that it gets processed. Reduce the amount of your outstanding debt. Keeping your debts, your balances low in relation to your credit limit. So only using 30% or less of your available credit. So what does that mean? So if you have a $1,000 limit on a credit card, not carrying a balance of more than $300 a month. Apply for and only open new lines of credit when you need them. It can be tempting every time you go into somewhere. Oh, you'll get 5% off if you sign up for this credit card. Oh, you'll get 10% off. Only apply for and use the credit that you need. Avoid too many inquiries on your credit report. As we saw on the last slide, too many inquiries can affect your score. So you don't want everybody under the sun pulling your credit. We talked about paying at least the minimum on your credit card bill. Keep your existing credit card accounts with zero balance open. So if you have old accounts that you're not using, don't rush out and close them, because that history actually helps your score. Because sometimes we pay things off and we want to close them. That may not be the right circumstance. Check your credit report and fix any errors right away. If you don't qualify for a regular credit card, try a secure card. There are opportunities to establish credit if you've had problems in the past. And if you need help, seek help from a HUD certified counseling agency. So an organization like Working in Neighborhoods, and there are several other HUD approved agencies in town. We would be more than happy to help you. So that's just a summary, a quick snippet on credit, but credit is so important in the home buying process. And so if you've had credit issues, you can recover from that. It takes some time, but you can do it, and we will work with you to get there if home ownership is your goal. Different lenders have different scoring requirements for their loans. There are lenders who will do it as low as 620. More of them are in the 660, 640 to 680. So it just depends. That's why it's important to talk to your lender, talk to the loan officer, see what loan products they have available that may suit your specific needs. Often people will start with the highest interest rate because you're paying the most money for that loan to pay it back. Other people, if they want to see that quick success, they'll start with the smallest one, get it paid off, then start using that money to pay the next one so that they can see some success along the way. So it depends on your situation, but a lot of folks will start with the highest interest rate so that they're paying less in fees and interest over the long run. Most of the time, if you both sign for that debt, you're both equally responsible for dealing with that debt. If you are not the co-signer on it, there may be things that you can do, but if you signed for a debt, took that out, the loan out, then you are responsible and you're going to need to deal with that. Lenders will look at what is your outstanding debt and credit obligations, because they want to make sure this loan is affordable, that you're going to be able to repay the loan. And so loans have what they call debt to income ratios, and so they want to look at what are your outstanding monthly obligations, that minimum payment. So like your car payment, your student loan, any other installment loans, your minimum credit card payment. And so that gets factored in, and they're looking at your gross monthly income. And it'll depend on the particular loan product what the ratio is, and both of our lenders in the room can answer what their ratios are, but that'll help you figure out how much can I afford. Just because I have decent income, if I have so much debt, that means I don't have a lot of room for this mortgage. But if I pay my debt off, then that frees up more money that I have available in my income each month to pay my mortgage note. Most of the things that need to happen to repair your credit, you can do. And if you need help doing it, there are organizations like ourselves and other HUD-approved agencies who can help you do that for no charge, for free. So give us a call. We can help you do that because it's taking a look at what's there. If there are errors, writing validation letters to prove if it's really your debt, correction letters once you've paid it off, making sure it reports that it's paid off and not just hanging out there, negatively impacting your score. So all of those things you can do or you can do with the assistance of organizations like ours, and it's free. Okay. So don't pay somebody to fix your credit, because that's money that you can use to pay off the debt that you may owe. So why use that to pay somebody else? And often what happens is they dispute it, so it goes away for a period of time and everything looks good, but once it's verified that it belongs to you, it comes back. So don't do that. The other part about bankruptcy, that's going to really depend on your individual situation, and I would say talk to somebody about that before you make that decision to see are there any other options, and if that is your only option, then what is the timing? Because there is a period of time after your bankruptcy is discharged that you have to wait and reestablish new credit to show that you're managing your bills. So I would say talk to somebody if you're considering that. We know that certain things impact your score, and so once it's corrected, your score is going to go up. So knowing where you're starting and how close you are to where the loan credit score is that you need to be is what's going to be your guide. So if you're slowly paying things off, it's going to be going up that whole time. So you may be ready to go once you get the last thing resolved and have that receipt that that's been taken care of. You can go to annualcreditreport.com and you can get each of your credit reports, one from Equifax, one from Experian, and one from TransUnion. And it's important to check your scores annually, make sure there's no mistakes, make sure everything's reporting properly. Also to make sure that you haven't been the victim of like identity theft or someone taking out credit in your name. So it's always important to check your credit. With all of the scores, the higher the better. And it's going to depend on the scoring model what that range is. Like the FICO score is like 300 to 850. Beacon, it's in that range, up as well.
You want to go and talk to Working in Neighborhoods, Home Ownership Center, one of the agencies that will help you get your credit score together without charging anything. Don't pay one of these companies all that money, and that's just what Hope was saying. Don't fall into that trap, because they're out there. They're going to say they will erase all your bad credit, and they might for a minute, and then it comes back. You don't want that. You really want to fix it. So another thing, just one little piece of advice: if anybody has credit card problems, and that's just so many people. You start getting those credit cards with the interest rates. Go to Working in Neighborhoods, Home Ownership Center, one of these organizations that will help you decide how to pay down that debt. And when you get that card paid down, don't close it. That's what Hope was saying. Don't close it. Keep the card. I suggest you put it in a bag, stick it in your freezer. Don't make it accessible so you go, oh, now I've got all this credit, let me spend it again, because that's what we tend to do. So don't, you can cut it up, you can put it away, but just don't close the account, because that's the fact that you would have zero debt will help your credit score. Okay, so everybody has that info. There's a lot you can do to get your credit score together. Also, we're going to talk a little later to some organizations, for example, Price Hill Will, and I don't want to speak for them, but my understanding is that they often work with folks who might not have the best credit score and can't get conventional loans, but know how to save money. And so they can work with them in terms of helping them get a home. There's also Habitat for Humanity at the table in the back. So there's some options too, so keep all that in mind.
Again, my name is Derek Gandy. I'm the president of the Greater Cincinnati Realtors Association. And as the Vice Mayor mentioned, we are primarily made up of African American real estate professionals like myself. I actually work at Caldwell Banker. I've been a real estate agent for the last 8+ years. Whether it's investing, whether it's because you want more space in your home, or when you use that to grow your business. All of those reasons are great reasons to buy a home, because you're going to always have to have a place to live. That's not going to change ever. So if you're going to have a place to live, and you're going to have to pay to have a place to live, you should own the property that you live on, so that way you can take that equity and you can buy another house. You can take that equity and continue to get more education for yourself or your children. You can buy the house so next time you can buy a bigger house with a bigger basement, right? So I want to thank WIN, Working in Neighborhoods. They did a great job really explaining the credit repair process. And that is an extremely important process for you all to understand, because to be quite honest with you, that's really where we want to start the process. You want to pull up your credit report, you want to see where you're at credit-wise. If you've got debts or creditors that you need to pay off, you need to go ahead and pay them off. And a lot of times when you're dealing with credit, the hardest part is just getting started. They call and they're asking, hey, what's going on? And you don't pick up the phone, or you just send it to voicemail. Sometimes it's just as easy as saying, hey, look, I know I owe you $300, but over the next 12 months, I'm going to send you $40, $50 a month, just to kind of start working on getting those things brought down to a level. And once you do that and you establish yourself on a budget, you want to start saving money for a home, because you're going to have money for an inspection. You're going to have money for down payment if necessary.
And, you know, if you get into that house, you may decide, you know what, I want to change this around a little bit. I want to paint this house. I want to buy new furniture. You know, I want to put down new carpet. Maybe I want to buy some new appliances. Because in a number of cases, and especially the way the market is right now, the home may not be picture perfect for you day one. You might have to go into that house and you might have to put a little bit of sweat equity into it. You might have to put your own muscle behind it and clean it up and paint it. And you would want to do that anyway if you're moving into a new house. So those are some things that when you get started, that's with your credit, that's what you want to do. Then at that point, you want to select a realtor. You want to select the realtors. One from the realtors would be my recommendation, but someone whom you feel close with, someone whom you feel like, okay, I can communicate with this person, and they can communicate with me, and they can tell me good advice, and I believe what they're telling me and what they're trying to do. But then also someone who can accommodate kind of the schedule that you work on. You know, if you're a person that works maybe a second shift job, it might be easier to find someone who you know is available at 9 or 10 o'clock in the morning so you can go look at houses before you go into your work. Or maybe you work a third shift job and you need someone that's going to be able to show you houses late, so then that way, right before you go to work, you can go out and look at houses. So finding a real estate agent who you know, who you trust, who you're confident that can represent you is very important. And I would start that process immediately. So once you choose your real estate agent, you're going to connect with the Guardian Savings Bank, Fifth Thirds, the Republic Banks, and you're going to get pre-approved for a mortgage, right? So let me ask y'all a question. When y'all go shopping, do you know how much money you have to afford to pay for what you're paying for? You do, right? You don't just go shopping without knowing how much money is in your pocket or how much money is in your account. It's the same thing with getting pre-approved. Once you get pre-approved for a mortgage and you work with the loan officer to determine how much money you're going to spend on this house, and they'll be able to tell you, okay, you know, sir, ma'am, this is how much you're going to have to probably pay every month. And once you realize that you can probably buy more house than what you think you can, that's great. But don't spend everything on your house. You don't want to be house poor. You want to still have some money to pay for your car note and to pay your utility bills and maybe to go on a vacation, but more importantly, save. You still have to continue to save even though you own a home. So once you get that pre-approval letter, you're going to sit down with your real estate agent, and he or she's going to walk you through, hey, well, what are your buyer wants versus what you really need? You know, do you want a finished basement or do you need a finished basement? You know, do you need 3 bedrooms or do you need 4 bedrooms? Maybe you need 5. But we need to determine what your wants and your needs are, because that's going to really determine not only what type of house that you can afford, but also where you can buy is also very, very important. But more importantly than anything, at the end of the day, when you're buying a new house, you're going to have to make compromises on something. You know, you may not be able to get that finished basement, but it might have a big yard with a deck. And you might decide, hey, you know, I'm willing to do that. Well, you have to make some form of finding a middle ground with what you want versus what you need, because it's very rarely that you find like that perfect house. But believe me when I tell you, when you find the house that you want, it will be the perfect house. Trust me on that. So once we figure out what your buyer wants and your buyer needs are, you all can start looking for houses as soon as tonight. You know, you can pull up your phone, you can go to Zillow, you can go to Realtor.com, you can go to Realtor.com, and there's a wide variety of resources out there to start looking for homes and seeing what looks good and what doesn't look good. You can go to open houses. You can see what the houses look like. And once we find a house that works for you, we'll put it under contract. We'll write a contract for the purchase price, when we're going to close, which means when you would move into the house, which also means when you would start paying for the house. And once we get that agreed upon purchase price and move-in date, we'll go through, we'll let your lender know that you've got this new house under contract. We'll go through getting home insurance for that house to make sure that you've got home insurance to cover it. We're going to do an inspection. We're going to make sure that the house is in good order, that the structure is sound, that there's no termites, there's no water damage. And if need be, we'll ask for the seller to make repairs or the seller to make concessions, meaning that they're going to give you money in order to fix the house, or they're going to reduce the price. Either or, sometimes both. It really just depends on what the situation is. Once we do that, your lender will order an appraisal. So they're going to come out and order an appraisal to make sure that the house that you bought with that particular contract is worth what you are buying it for, because they want to protect their interest to make sure that you're getting a good deal. They don't want to see you end up in something that you cannot afford. Once the appraisal comes back, the loan gets approved, we do what we call a title search, where we look and see who used to own the home, and we want to make sure that there's not anyone else that may have rights to the home or may be due money for the home. Once that comes back clear, we do a final walkthrough. You change all the utilities around, you do your internet, your streaming, whatever you're working on with cable-wise, your trash collection as well as your water, and then we close. We sit down at the table, we sign some documents, and just like that, you're a new homeowner. That wasn't that hard process, was it? That's pretty straightforward, right? So one thing to try to make it easier for the buyer and the seller, everything that we do from a contract perspective is done online. So if you say, hey, I'm going to buy that house, I want to write it for $150,000, I can basically send you the contract electronically, and you can basically use your phone to sign the contract and all the other required docs. So we don't have to meet at UDF and sign the documents, at 6 o'clock in the morning. We can do everything electronic. It typically takes about 30 to 45 days from the time that we have the contract signed to the time that we close. So 30 to 45 days. So if you're living in an apartment, when you find out that the inspection went fine, you're ready to move forward, that's really kind of the time when you would notify your landlord, okay, ma'am, sir, on this date, I'm going to be closing on a house and I'm going to be moving. So that's something to also think about when you're buying a house. The earnest money deposit is really just the contract between you and the seller. The actual down payment is your responsibility with your lender. That doesn't really touch us as your real estate agent. Excellent question. So the earnest money is typically right around $500. You can put down $1,000. But we do suggest that you put down a little bit of earnest money to really just show that you're committed to buying this particular house. And that earnest deposit you give to your agent or the title company, and they hold it. And when you close on that house, they take that $500 or that $1,000, whatever amount you put towards the house as earnest money, and deduct it from your overall purchase price. So if you paid $150,000 for the house, and you say, okay, I'm going to put $1,000 down, when you get the loan from your lender, you're only lending for $149,000, not the $150 was on the purchase. Is there an opportunity that if once you write the contract and your house that you want goes under contract, can you actually back out of that deal? The answer is yes. If something comes back during the inspection period, which typically is about 10 days after we sign the contract, you have that time to bring in a formal inspector to inspect the house. There could be termite damage, there could be structural damage. Anything that pops up on the inspection report that you don't feel comfortable moving with, you do have the right to get out of the contract. Now, in some cases, depending on how far along you moved, you may end up losing your earnest money deposit, which is something I didn't get a chance to get into. But 9 times out of 10, we should be able to get you out of it. It just depends on the situation. It depends on when you decide to get out of the contract.
So a quick summary there about the real estate process, because some people say, wow, that's just a long process. But as Derek told us, you choose a real estate agent. You can talk to a real estate agent tonight, even if you feel you're not ready yet. They're going to pull your credit report, so then you're going to have to do credit repair. If you know your credit's not good, you can start credit repair right away. You don't have to wait until you find your real estate agent. And then they're going to pre-approve you for a mortgage so that you know how much house you can afford to buy. You don't want to look for a $100,000 house if your pre-approval rate is $70,000. You want to look for a house in your price range so that you aren't wasting your time. And then once you find the house that you want, you make an offer, and hopefully the seller accepts your offer, and then you go into a contract and you put down your earnest money so that the contract really is serious. But you have contingency, so you can get out of it. I mean, you haven't done your inspection yet. You don't know if that house has been in a fire, if there are termites, you know, if there's something wrong with the foundation. So you have contingencies, so after the inspection, you can negotiate with the seller. Your real estate agent does this to say, okay, you need to fix the roof, you need to fix the termites, or you might say, you know, I don't think so, I'm backing out of this, I'm going to look for something else. So you can still get out of it within that time limit. And then your lender orders an appraisal, because say if you're offering $70,000 for the house, the bank wants to make sure the house is worth $70,000. There's a title search. You want to make sure the seller actually has title to the house before they give it to you, because maybe it's in someone else's name and it's like, oh, you can't sell me someone else's house, so you want to make sure the title is clear. And then you have the final walkthrough. Then you sit down at closing, sign all these documents, and they hand you the keys to your house, and then you move in. So that's
One of the barriers that some people face is not having enough money to be able to put down for that down payment. Because when you get a loan, that's to pay for a portion of the house, but typically you have to put some of your own funds into purchasing that home, known as the down payment. And so there are some programs out there that will assist you with your down payment. I'm going to go over a couple of those this evening. They all have different requirements, slight variations. So I'm going to go through some of the highlights this evening, but I want you, if you're interested in them, go to the websites, look them up, know what their particular requirements are. So the first one I'm going to talk about is the City of Cincinnati's ADDIE program, the American Dream Down Payment Initiative. And so for the city, if you're purchasing within the City of Cincinnati and you meet their income guidelines, you can get anywhere from 4 to 5% of the purchase price in down payment assistance. And there is a top limit. There are requirements on if you're buying an existing home, what the limit is. If you're buying a new construction, there is an upper limit to how much you can pay for that house. But those numbers get updated, so go to the website, which is choosecincy.com, CHOOSE, Cincy, CINCY.com, and look for the down payment assistance. And so the application is on there. You can print it off, fill it out. There are documents that you have to provide with that application, and then turn it into the city. It gets reviewed to see if you're eligible, and once you're approved, you get a letter saying, this is how much you can get towards your down payment assistance for the purchase of the home, and it'll outline all the requirements. You cannot be under contract when you apply for the ADDIE program. So keep that in mind, because some of the other ones, you have to already have a contract when you apply. So there's a difference. So pay attention to the details in this whole process, getting your loan, shopping for a home. There are lots of details. Take your time, pay attention to it, and follow the time limits that go with it, because otherwise you can get jammed up, and you don't want that. You want this to be an easy process that goes well. The next one I'm going to talk about is through the Ohio Housing Finance Agency. So that's our state housing finance agency, and they have a couple of different loan programs that have down payment assistance. And so the first one is the Your Choice Down Payment Assistance Program. Again, that has income limits, and they have two different down payment options. One is 2.5% and one is 5%. They have a loan and down payment assistance program called the Ohio Heroes Loan Program. And so that's for people who, police, fire, EMT, paramedics, doctors, nurses, STNAs, teachers, administrators, counselors. So check that out if you are in one of those categories. They also have a Grants for Grad program. And so that, if you have graduated from an accredited institution of higher education in the last 48 months, then you fit that profile. So if you go to their website, ohiohome.org, you can find information. There's frequently asked questions. It tells you the specifics of what the credit score needs to be, what your income needs to be, and part of that's going to depend on the county that you're purchasing your home in. So check that out. All that information is up to date. The next one is called the Welcome Home Program with the Federal Home Loan Bank. And so that one comes out every March 1st, and those funds go very quickly. I don't know if there are funds that, okay, I'm seeing the funds are gone. So that goes very quickly, but that if you're not ready now, and you know it's gonna be next spring when you're ready to purchase, that's another program that has up to $5,000 in down payment assistance. And that one you would talk to your lender, because the lender has to be a participating member of the Cincinnati Federal Home Loan Bank. The next one is the Communities First program. And so that one has slightly higher income limit than some of the others. The income is based on the borrower, not the entire household, which is a little different than the others, because some of them look at the whole household even if they're not a part of the loan process. So keep that in mind. And that one, you go through your lender. They have different lenders that participate with that program. And then lastly, lenders have different down payment assistance and closing cost grants available. So you want to talk to everybody in your process, and they come out sometimes. There's different money that's available, that becomes available at varying times throughout the year. So ask them, what programs do you have? Do you have down payment assistance? Do you have any closing cost grants? And some of these do allow you to layer them, that you can get more than one grant program. Now, I will say some of these do have a requirement that you have to live in the home for a particular period of time, and it'll depend on the funding source. Some of them are as little as 3 years, some of them go as high as 7 years. So again, pay attention to the details. There is money out there to help you purchase your home and cover your down payment and closing cost. Do your research, talk to folks, and good luck. There are times when you can negotiate with the seller to get them to contribute to your closing cost as a part of the contract that you write, but that's something you and your realtor will write into your contract when you're negotiating with the seller to see if they're willing to cover a portion of your closing cost. And it'll just depend on the seller. It's strictly at their discretion.
Okay, the next presentation will be about mortgages. And so, you might not get all of this at once. I mean, it really helps to hear a lot of this over and over so that you get it. I mean, some of it just gets really complicated, and bankers know all this, and they talk all that banker talk, and we're like, what are they talking about? But I want you all to hear it. Some of you are hearing it for the first time. Some of you have heard it before. We're at all different levels of knowledge about the home buying process. So I want everyone to leave feeling a little bit more comfortable with it and feeling like we learned something as a step, okay? So we're going to bring Wally Bates here from Union Savings Bank, and he's going to do mortgages one-on-one, 101.
I love doing mortgages. I love to do a big old stinking loan, 1.2 million house up on the hill. But you know what? There's something special about helping somebody get their first house. There really is. There's something about that phone call when we call and say you're pre-approved or your loan's approved, and you hear, woo-hoo! That does your heart good. It really, really does. So I'm here to talk about mortgages 101, a little bit of a broad subject, so I'll have you out of here by about 10:30. Actually, Derek, Dan, Hope have done a great job covering a lot of this stuff. Really have. So let me ask you a question though. How did you get here tonight? Did anybody put this address in their maps? Isn't that an awesome thing? You got to figure out where you're trying to go. You put an address in your phone, and what pops up is step-by-step directions on how to get there. It tells you how long it's going to take you to get there. And do we have enough gas to get there? You got to think about that. So wouldn't it be cool if we could do that with mortgages? Wouldn't it be cool if we had an app, we could just wave a magic wand and it gives us step-by-step directions? Well, let me tell you, we're pretty close to that. So here's the deal. There are three big pieces that make a mortgage puzzle. The first one, Hope's talked about, credit score and credit history. It's vital. We got to know what's going on in our history. We're going to talk more about that in just a second. The next piece, loan to value. What that means, how much are we borrowing compared to what the house is worth? And lastly, just as important, income to debt. How much do we make every month versus what we got going out, as well as when we add the new mortgage payment? Does this make sense? So this is the big three. This is our maps. This is what gets us to the next step, and we got to know these things. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and talk about each of these sections. And again, we've kind of talked about it with Hope, and Dan's talked about these things. But we're going to talk a little bit about each one, and then here's the big kick. You ready? I'm going to give you homework. I'm going to give you a little play-at-home version of what we're doing tonight. So let's talk about these things. So as we talked about, Hope's made it very clear, credit score and credit history. One of the biggest things that we have is when I talk to somebody for the first time, they don't know what's going on with their credit. And truthfully, unless you're in the business, unless you know what you're looking at, we really don't know. And here's the most confusing thing. The FICO scores you get, the Credit Karma scores you might get, free annual credit report. There's some great places to get credit. Your scores are not relevant there. What did he say? Your scores are not actual there. They are an estimate of what your scores will be, but what is vital is the information. What is on your credit report is there, and we got to know. We got to know what's going on with that. Have we been late? Do we have some collections? Are we always on time? So whatever it is with you, and people really don't know. I'll talk to somebody and they'll say, you know, I'm kind of late once in a while. Okay, let's take a look at it. We pull their credit and they're 30 days, 60 days, 90 days late. Yes, they're a little bit late. The next person says, well, you know, once in a while I'm a little late. We pull their credit and they're 10 days late, they pay that little $10 payment. They got stellar credit. So people really don't know. But we can't bury our heads in the sand on credit. We have to know what we're doing there. Okay? Next one, loan to value. This is pretty simple. How much is the house and how much have we saved? How much are we putting down? Are we getting an inheritance? Are we getting a gift from a family? Or one of these wonderful down payment assistance programs? We got to know what are we borrowing compared to what is the house worth. Okay? Pretty simple. The last one, income to debt. How much are we making versus what do we have going out? So we got to know, we got to stay on our game. How much are we paying? And now when we add this new monthly payment, are we going to be within ratios? So those are the things. These are the maps on how we get there. So homework, are we ready? You can't leave here tonight and say you didn't know. So I want everybody to go. NerdWallet, Credit Karma, freeannualcreditreport.com. Whatever the free service you want to, go look at those scores. They're not as important as what is the history. What is it telling you? Because all those sites are going to tell you what is good and what is not so good on your credit. We got to know that. All right, the last second little piece here of homework might be the hardest. Budget. We got to do a budget. Because the credit score and the credit history, that's our maps. Your budget, that's the gas. That's the money. Do we have it, what we need to get there? So here's what we got to do. I won't ask how many people in the room have a budget, because I think Derek was talking about you don't go to the grocery store without knowing how much money you have. But turn signals. Who uses turn signals in this room? Who doesn't use it? I want to talk to you, that's a pet peeve of mine. But you know what a manufacturer calls a turn signal? An indicator signal. They don't call it a turn signal because you're not waiting till you're about to turn and you put it on. We should indicate what we're doing. So budgets indicate what are we doing with our money. So the second piece of your homework, I want you all to look at your next 4 paychecks. The next 4 paychecks, where is that money going? Because that's our map. That's what determines how much can I afford. What is my rent? And if I take the rent out, what's the mortgage payment going to be? And the reality of it is, the realtor is going to tell you, often a mortgage is less than a rent in today's world. So those are the things that we need to do so we can do our math, so we can figure out this is what I want to do, this is when I would like to do it, these are my steps to get there, do we have the gas? We good? That's your homework. You know, the real easiest way to take a look at that is your mortgage payment, including taxes and insurance, your mortgage payment plus any automobile payments or credit card payments should be at or less than 40% of your income. That's a good rule to go by. It's easier to approve a loan that ratio is better. We can approve into the 40s, but if you can keep that payment of all your automobiles, credit cards, student loans, those installment loans, plus your new mortgage, if you keep that at 40% or less, you're in good shape. That earnest money. So that goes towards your down payment. So in other words, if you put $500 or $1,000 down and you're going to have $15,000 for this particular house, you would only need 14. So it counts against that. So escrows, what escrows is, that term means you are paying for your taxes and your insurance in your payment. So if you put down 20% on a house, it's your option to escrow. You don't have to include that in your payment, but a lot of people do just for the convenience of an even payment throughout, all right? So you can have less of a payment without including your taxes and insurance, but you got 3 big payments. You got 2 tax payments during the year and your annual insurance payment. So a lot of people prefer to escrow, include it into your payment. You're welcome.
Next, we're going to hear from Phil Denning with the Port Authority. A lot of people say, you know, the port has houses, and you all know they just acquired almost 200 houses, and there are other properties. So people often ask us, you know, how do you get a house from the Port Authority? A lot of investors look to the port for houses also. So we're going to have Phil Denning to come, and thank you so much. At one point, we were going to do this together, so I'm really glad you all are here. So Laura Bruner, who's head of the Port Authority, said maybe last year, might have been a year ago, that we should do some workshops together. So we wanted to make sure that the Port Authority was included, and then maybe at some point we'll do workshops together where we just talk about the Port Authority process. But we wanted you to get a little taste of it. So Phil, thank you so much.
You know, at the center of our neighborhood strategy is housing and residential, which is what we're here to talk about, commercial, and the land bank. And the land bank really works on both sides. So we're not going to talk about commercial. We're working in Price Hill on commercial stuff, on Glenway, on Warsaw with Price Hill Will. But what we're really here to talk about is residential development. So before we get into what the port's doing on the residential side, very briefly, talking about the land bank. You know, I think there's this myth out there that the land bank is an all-powerful tool which can take all the property at once and do it at once. And if that were true, you know, it'd be a lot more fun. But that's not true. The one basic power that the land bank has is that after a property gets foreclosed by the county and goes to sheriff's sale, where anybody can buy it, if it doesn't sell, it goes to sheriff's sale again, where anybody can buy it. And then if it doesn't sell, it goes to a forfeited list. And the land bank can take property from that list. So really the public and bidders have an access to that property before the land bank. Now, that's how it is in Ohio Revised Code, that's just the law. A major change since COVID is that investors have been buying properties when they're at their sheriff's sale before the land bank has been able to. So 5-10 years ago, the port, the land bank, we had lots of properties that were blighted, vacant, they had structures. Today, the land bank has about 1,000 properties, and only about 40 actually have a structure on them. The vast majority of what we have are vacant pieces of land, which we're working, you know, I was just talking with Sheila, working with Rachel. We need to figure out what to do there, and there's a real opportunity to make those houses in the future, but that's a different kind of project than renovating an existing house. So I wanted to just be clear about exactly what the land bank is and kind of what we're doing. Some of the stuff you've seen about the land bank, you know, we're a different kind of land bank in that we don't want to just demolish everything. We want to stabilize buildings, we want to save buildings. We just stabilized and worked with a redeveloper to redevelop the building in Mount Auburn at the top. We took the Regal Theater from the forfeited list that I talk about. We took that from the forfeited list in 2014 for $1. We spent $600,000 on it, and right now it's not leaking. We're waiting to figure out how to redevelop it with a couple of minority partners. So that's one thing that the land bank does, but those, again, that's all subsidy. Those are projects that just take a bunch of money. With the property that's in the land bank, anybody in this room can go look at the website and see what's available. Again, you're going to see mostly vacant land, but we have an application process. So if you are a buyer out there, a future home buyer, and you can't find what you want to find for sale, it is possible for you to work with the developer, to work with the home builder of some sort, and apply for a vacant piece of land out of the land bank to build a house on. Now that's a whole lot more complicated in a lot of ways than just, you know, getting approved to buy an existing house. But it is a big thing that the port or the land bank can do for home buyers. So I'm going to skip some of this. A lot of this is available in other places, and I want to be sure to get out of here. But these are some of the properties that the land bank used to get for the most part, in really rough shape. Now again, most of what we have today is not like this. You know, it is just vacant land that we try to keep cut and clean up from dumping. So that's the land bank. The port also builds houses. We redevelop houses and we build houses. And in the spectrum of housing affordability, most of what we do, we focus in the 3 white buckets. Affordable, which when I say affordable, I mean income qualified. You have to meet income limits. Market rent, market housing, and when I say market housing, you'll see an example. We build the house, we sell it for as much as it can sell for, but it still takes a subsidy. I'll talk about that. And then, obviously, clear home ownership. So I'll talk a little bit about that too. This is the quick slide about what the HERC and the Port and the Land Bank, all of our team have built in the last 6 or 7 years. The HERC is, again, it's another entity, but that is specifically for income qualified homeowners. We build a house at a loss, and we sell it only to income qualified buyers. Now, that's great, but it's also tough. There are some houses, even in Price Hill, that we've tried to sell to 12 different families. But because they were $100 over the income limit, $1,000 over the income limit, we can't sell it to them. So, that's its own process, but it is a hard, we have mortgage bankers here. It's hard because you have to be able to qualify for a mortgage, but you can't earn too much. So there's a narrow gap of people that can fit into that income qualified homeownership bucket. The second kind is what we call REACH, which is not income qualified. Any person of any income can buy that house. We've built about 25 of those houses in Price Hill over the last, I think, 3 years. We've done 60 or 70 in Hamilton County over the past 10 years. And that property, we still sell it for whatever we can, but it still takes we take a loss on it, but that's okay because it's necessary for the community. The last thing we're doing, and I'll talk about that at the end, I don't need to talk about it now. So a couple of examples of what that looks like in practice. These two properties were in the HERC, so these were income qualified. It took $410,000 to renovate them. We could only sell them for something like $230,000. So what that meant is for each house, we had to go find grants from banks for the $60,000 of difference. So that's what Deborah Robb is doing, finding grants from banks and other lenders, and then once we find that subsidy, we renovate the house and we sell it. Very similarly on Mayfield, it's a similar house in Price Hill. Okay, the last part of affordable home ownership that, in terms of new construction that I'll talk about is ARPA. So these are the federal dollars that the city council allocated last year. The city council allocated $2.5 million to the land bank to build new houses. And the goal is build new houses on vacant land. Now, what we're really hoping to do is sell them to homeowners who've gone through financial literacy training, gone through homebuyer training, and they're all ready, much like folks in this room, to buy a house. They know when, they know hope, wherever hope is, they know hope. They're ready and they've been qualified. So that's our main goal. It's still we're gonna lose money on every house, about $50,000 to $80,000, but we're gonna be filling in some of those missing teeth in neighborhoods. Okay, so lastly, I'll talk about CARE. CARE is creating affordable real estate equity. Who in this room knows about or lives next to a house that is owned, is owned by an investor of some sort? A single family house that's a rental house that is owned by an investor. All right, got some hands, some nods. So we started doing research at the Land Bank about a year ago, and we wanted to understand this change that's happening in real estate. So we're not all crazy. It's not, it really is harder to buy a house here than it ever has been. For the past 50 years, what institutional investments, Wall Street firms have done in real estate is they've gone and they're buying retail strip centers, they're buying industrial warehouses, and they buy the same kind of property across the country. And that's how REITs and real estate investors have acted. Something different is happening today because those same kinds of investors are buying single-family houses and they're renting them basically forever. They're buying properties with all cash, they're closing immediately with no due diligence, and so that's a huge fundamental change in what it feels like to live in a neighborhood. The bad parts of that is they're ruthless about eviction. They don't invest typically in landscaping, making the property nice. They're not responsive to tenant needs. And so this is a major issue in Hamilton County, not just in Hamilton County, but in the nation. So we found out that this was happening, and we found out that over 4,000 properties are owned by just 5 institutional investors in Hamilton County. So that's the undercurrent, okay? 4 months ago, we got word from a broker in town that 200 of these properties are going to be sold locally here. They're in Hamilton County. They were owned by an investor, they got foreclosed on, and the court appointed a receiver, and the receiver was selling the properties. And so what the port did was kind of stuck our necks out a little bit, and we bid to buy those properties. You may have read about this in the news, I'm not sure. This is what these kind of investors look like. The person that owns a house next to you might be one of these entities. NREA VB2 LLC. That's actually who owns the property. Okay? The master owner of those properties is one company called Vinebrook. They're about a $4 billion company in Texas. Okay? They have 400 code violations on just their properties in Hamilton County. So we actually were lucky because the port, using our own, we issued bonds actually, we didn't have the money. We issued bonds and we actually bought 200 of these houses. And our goal, they're all occupied. That is very different. The port, the land bank, all the stuff we've done until January was all with vacant property. Vacant, vacant, vacant. So now we have tenants. Some of you might be our tenants in these properties. Our goal with these 200 properties is to work with Wynn. We're going to hire Wynn, take as many of the tenants in our properties that want to through financial counseling and home buyer training, and offer each of them the opportunity to buy the house that they're currently renting. So some of you might be in those properties, I don't know. There are 85 of those houses in Price Hill. There's another 80 or so in the rest of the county. And we have an advisory board with some of you, also some of the stakeholders that are in the room, legal aid. They're all helping us, making sure that we're doing it the right way. We have a favorable eviction policy. We're really trying to be a good landlord. And the goal is not to make a single dollar, but the goal is to be able to take a bunch of rental housing, move it to home ownership, and in the process, to never have to ask the city or the county for money and subsidy. So it's a little different, it's a little wild, but we also hope that it fundamentally changes the way neighborhoods work, the way neighborhoods feel, and the way that normal working people have as an opportunity and an access to buy a house. So I can go into more detail on that later, but I'll just lastly say this. Most people don't know that the port also runs a down payment assistance program throughout the entire state of Ohio. In 2021, we provided something like $4 million of down payment assistance to 1,200 households across the state of Ohio. This is a program that's available through a bank, a lending institution. It's called Communities First. So when you're in the process of thinking about how to finance your house and how to get down payment assistance, I think this is on the nature of $5,000 to $10,000 per house for down payment assistance. And the average house price that we're working with is about $160,000. So, reasonably entry-level new home ownership homes. Okay, I'll stop talking. My name is Philip Denning. I'm with the port. I appreciate you all your time, and I have cards in the back, and happy to answer questions as they may come. Thank you.
Okay, Rachel Hastings from Price Hill Will. She's going to talk about, so these are the programs we're going to talk about now are alternatives to the conventional programs, okay? So this is really good information as well. So Rachel Hastings.
So Price Hill Will, we are the Community Development Corporation for all 3 Price Hill neighborhoods. So we work in Lower East and West Price Hill on a whole variety of projects, so community gardens, youth orchestra program called My Cincinnati. We are doing some commercial development. We renovated, if you're familiar with Lower Price Hill, we renovated the buildings that are now Miser's Market and Fresh Grocery in Lower Price Hill. So we've got lots and lots of initiatives going on throughout the neighborhood. I'm going to skip over this because it's hard to see these dots here. But this kind of shows you the 3 Price Hill neighborhoods and some of the projects we've got going on. A lot of our work, of course, starts in getting to know folks in the neighborhoods and sort of what is important to them. So I can see, obviously, many of you here tonight are interested in becoming homeowners, or a couple folks are talking about investors. I think someone else talked about starting a group home. So you are all trying to improve the quality of your life and your family's life and trying to find resources to make that a reality. I encourage you again to reach out to so many organizations that are trying to work to make Price Hill a better place to live. If you don't already know, My Cincinnati is our youth orchestra program, and it's free for any student who lives or goes to school in Price Hill. We meet every day at the Firehouse on Warsaw and Considine, and it's just an amazing program for kids to learn not only music, but sort of how to be leaders in the next generation of community leaders here. Again, I talked a little bit about real estate. In addition to home ownership projects, which I'll talk about more in depth in a minute, we're also doing renovations right now on Warsaw and Glenway. So just, I think behind me here, if you see a whole block of buildings on Warsaw between Grand and Constantine that are under construction, those are our projects. And so we'll have affordable apartments upstairs and first floor commercial spaces. So if you want to start a business in Price Hill also, please let me know. There we go, about the Creative Campus. So the program I really wanted to talk about tonight is called Homesteading. And homesteading sort of turns the traditional homeownership process on its head because we know that the traditional homeownership process does not work for everybody. So what we do for homesteading is we partner with a lot of organizations like Working in Neighborhoods, Legal Aid, Santa Maria Community Services, and together we help identify houses that are vacant that can be renovated for families, and we also help families along that homeownership journey, but particularly for lower income families that cannot, for whatever reason, obtain a mortgage. So just sort of the process overall is Price Hill Will acquires a piece of property, and we work on it to make sure that it meets building code standards. So we make sure that the mechanicals are updated, so the plumbing, electric, the roof isn't leaking, it has heating and air conditioning, that sort of thing. But we don't complete the cosmetic kind of work. So it might have a perfectly functional bathroom, but like the vanity is from the 1980s. It's a little dated, not the prettiest, but it works. At the same time, families, and these are families who are below what's 65% of area median income. So what does that mean? What that means is families, as an example, a family of 4 who's earning $55,000 or less would come to us and say they're interested in becoming a homesteading family, and we would immediately refer them to our partners at Santa Maria Community Services. Santa Maria will help the families kind of look at their credit if they have a credit history. Some families have no credit history. Like if you have never banked, for whatever reason, never gotten a credit card, you have no credit history, it's also very hard to get a mortgage loan if you don't have a credit history. And some folks have just chosen to just steer clear from banks, right? Maybe like your parents got into trouble with banks or with credit cards, and so you've tried to not get into debt, but then if you don't have a credit history, you can't get a mortgage. So it's a sort of like catch-22. So we will look to see if you have a credit history, if it needs to be repaired, but also if you don't have a credit history, that's okay. Santa Maria staff will make sure that you have a budget so that you can make sure that, again, as folks were saying earlier, that your income is not more than what your expenses are on a regular basis. And then once you've gone through that process, then you would work with staff at Working in Neighborhoods to help you make sure that you really understand what it's like to become a homeowner, what the responsibilities are like. I mean, it is a lot of work to become a homeowner, right? Like you have to be the one to change the furnace filters and cut the grass and do all kinds of things that maybe, you used to having a landlord do, but it's your responsibility now. So it's important for folks to really understand the commitment that they're making and the opportunity that they have. Once that family has been approved by Santa Maria and Working in Neighborhoods, that's when we meet the family and match them to a house. The way our homesteading program works is once a family has identified a house that there's a good fit for their family, and we're focused right now in the Price Hill neighborhoods because again, we're trying to support the neighborhoods that are nearest and dearest to our hearts. So you would identify a house that is a good fit for your family, and then you would sign a land contract that Legal Aid wrote for us. Most of the time, land contracts are something you want to run away from, to be honest. In this case, this is special. I mean, Legal Aid is a nonprofit attorneys. They wrote this on our behalf. And it's the legal document that allows us to sell you this house. We sell you the house over 5 years. You make land contract payments to us at 0% interest. You need to have a $1,500 down payment because we recognize that a lot of folks can't save $20,000, $30,000, but that $1,500 needs to come from you and your family because we want to see that you have the capacity to save. After you move it, before you moved to the house, we had signed the land contract with you, and we would have staff kind of review everything with you, and our partners at Legal Aid and Santa Maria do this. You move into the house, you make payments to us over 5 years, and then you would complete an agreed upon scope of work on the house. So if you want to replace that bathroom vanity from the 1980s, you can do that. We might, want to do some interior painting or some landscaping, and we will do inspections to make sure that you're keeping up with that kind of stuff, because again, this is a big responsibility, but our goal is to hold your hand through the entire process to make sure that you're successful. At the end of 5 years, assuming that you've made your payments and you've completed the scope of work, we transfer ownership of that house to you outright, and it's yours to do whatever you want to with it. So the amazing thing is that in a 5-year time period, you have the opportunity to go from moving into your house to owning it outright, and then that equity is yours to do with as you please. So if you, for example, want to send a kid to school, or you need to buy a car, you have equity in that house, and hopefully over those 5 years you've been working on your credit as well, so that you can get a loan to do something like that. So it's a pretty special program here in Price Hill. It's relatively small scale because we're always, like other folks said, like looking for houses, and it's harder to get houses these days. But we're looking to be creative and work with other partners. Our goal is to help families become homeowners and build equity. I think we know in this country, and especially in this city, that people of color have not had opportunities to buy houses the way that they should have. And although we have some great bank partners in the room, there are still a lot of restrictions and regulations that make it hard for folks to buy houses. So we're trying to kind of get around the banks a little bit and find other ways to help folks become become homeowners. So if you have questions about it, I'm happy to answer. I'm also sitting in the back over there, very close to the pizza, which is dangerous for me right now. But I'm happy to talk to you about this if you have any interest, and I'm happy to be here. So thanks.
Here, it's great to see so many people are interested in bettering themselves with equity by owning their own home. That's the greatest thing that you can do as an American, is to own your own property for your families. So we are a community learning center as well, and Grad Cincinnati has been around for 20 years, and we work with Cincinnati Public Schools, and we're in 10 Cincinnati Public Schools where we have resource coordinators. What is a resource coordinator? A resource coordinator's responsibility is to bring resources to the school to meet the needs of the family and the students. So in our resource centers, as Alan has said, we are developing a component within our resource centers to help you. We don't have all of the resources, but as I said here tonight, and as Alan has said, the resources are right here in the room. But how do you connect to those resources? You may need someone to hold your hand to get you to that point. And that is what we're all about, is helping you, to support you in that process and walking you through it. Even down to developing budgets, to talking about your finances, and education is the way out. And even with our students now, we're beginning to talk to them about home ownership, building a budget, going on to college, getting a career. If you don't have money, you can do none of this. So we're working with our students in the high schools presently to make sure that they are aware of all that they need to do to be financially able to make a better life for themselves as well as their families. So the partnership is great. Resource centers are all about partnerships. How do we engage those partnerships within Cincinnati Public Schools to support you? We're getting ready to open up a very brand new partnership with Cincinnati Public Schools. We're going to open up a college and career center. Now, what is that center for? That center is to be available to those people that have graduated from Cincinnati Public Schools, the alumni that have gone on, but they need some support. They may want to go back to college. They may want to get resources. How do I go about even getting home ownership? If I want to go into a career, how do I begin to do that? So we will have intake programs where we will work with you to do that. So look forward to it. The 1st of July, the center will be opening, and we're there to support you. That's what community learning centers are all about. Thank you.
Director of School Center Neighborhood School Center Neighborhood Development for the organization, the Community Learning Center Institute. And I'm here with Pat Stewart-Adams with Grad Cincinnati, and we help Cincinnati Public Schools build out community learning centers at all of their sites throughout the city. And I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means, and then we're going to get into the meat of our initiative. So we're here today to talk about a new initiative that we are launching called Schoolhouse, where we are connecting families across the city to affordable homeownership opportunities. A very quick overview. Our philosophy is that the success of the school and the success of the neighborhood are inextricably linked. If you have great schools and great neighborhoods, you're going to have a great city. And just a little bit of background about community learning centers and what that term means. Cincinnati Public Schools revamped its model to that of community learning centers, whereby the school is treated as the town square of the neighborhood. Community learning centers have been around for about a decade plus and have catalyzed positive changes for Cincinnati's public schools and its neighborhoods. The Community Learning Center Institute, the organization that I work for, leads the development of all schools as community learning centers in the greater Cincinnati region. Our mission is to optimize the conditions for learning and catalyze the revitalization of the neighborhood. And we do this by focusing on neighborhood indicators that impact a student's ability to succeed in school. So we know we hear zip codes matter, where you live matters, your housing stability matters. So we really want to make sure that we are creating thriving neighborhoods around our schools so that our children can be successful. And homeownership, of course, is a crucial part of that work. Work to build out community learning centers began in 1999 when Cincinnati Public Schools was mandated by the Ohio Supreme Court to undergo what's called a facilities master plan. And in that plan, all schools were mandated to be renovated or demolished and rebuilt. So you'll see that the Cincinnati Public Schools in the Price Hill neighborhood have either been somewhat recently renovated or they're new construction buildings. So what are community learning centers in Cincinnati? Community learning centers serve as the neighborhood's anchor institution, and they're a set of co-located public-private community partnerships responsive to the vision and needs of each school and its neighborhood. It leverages millions of dollars, each school leverages millions of dollars of services per year, and now, today, 100% of public schools in Cincinnati are considered to be community learning centers. So if you live in Cincinnati and you have a neighborhood school nearby, that is your community learning center. Getting to the connection between education and homeownership. We know that stable housing impacts a student's ability to succeed in school. That is why, as a community learning center, we are going down this path of connecting families to affordable homeownership opportunities. We know that research shows that students who have parents who are homeowners ultimately, the research shows that they were more likely to graduate, they are more likely to go on to get secondary education, and we see a lot of that is because of the stability that homeownership provides. We also know that housing instability impacts the classroom. It can impact the classroom negatively. For every move that a child makes, the research shows that they lose 3 months of learning loss. So every time a child moves, that's 3 months that they're losing for learning. And then we know with the housing market and the struggles that our families face, we have families that are chronically moving, right? And then it's really hard for those children to be able to retain that information in school. We also know that Cincinnati, this was mentioned earlier, but Cincinnati has one of the lowest homeownership rates in the nation. So in Cincinnati right now, the homeownership rate is about 38%. In the state of Ohio, it's 66%. And then in the United States, it's 64%. So you can see that we're really behind when it comes to affordable homeownership for our families. And then if you dive into that and look at the racial inequity in Cincinnati homeownership rates, it's really abysmal. So in Cincinnati, of the homeowners, 49% are white, 25% are African American, and then 24% of the Hispanic population are homeowners. So you can see that disparity in these numbers, and what we really need to do better to connect our families to homeownership opportunities. So that brings us to the Schoolhouse Initiative, where we are working to create one-stop homeownership shops at each community learning center site. So I know you guys are all here, and I see many of you taking diligent notes, and it's a lot of information. And ultimately, I know when I became a homeowner, it's a very intimidating process, and it can feel very lonely and confusing. And in this market, it can be debilitating, right? You just feel like, oh my goodness, like this is too much. And so what we're really working to do at our community learning centers is to create a one-stop homeownership shop where you can come into your community learning center and get supports and services where we have teams called family success teams who can walk by your side as you're going through this process. So we have at our sites, first we do outreach, so we engage with our families to say, hey, would you ever be interested in becoming a homeowner? Is that something that you have a goal? If that is your goal, we provide education through many of the partnerships that are here today. We work with Habitat for Humanity, Price Hill Will, Santa Maria, working in neighborhoods, to really be able to provide those resources to our families and to the community. We work to remove barriers, so you heard a lot about, credit history, debt to income ratio, all of the things that it takes to be able to qualify for a mortgage. And we have those resources available that can help you, that are really tailored to your specific needs, and then connect you to them. We provide a comprehensive inventory of affordable homes, so depending on, maybe you qualify for a traditional mortgage, maybe you don't qualify for a traditional mortgage and you need an alternative pathway like Habitat, like Price Hill Will, we can help get you connected to the right pathway that's best for you to be connected to affordable homeownership. We also have inventory of financing. So we had partners today talk about down payment assistance programs that the city and others have. And so we are able to, keep all of that together so that you can just come in and say, this is my situation, and we can say, okay, this is what you qualify for. And then lastly, providing support of home maintenance. So it's not just about buying the home, but it's about being a successful homeowner. So what does that look like? Really what we are hoping to do is to be able to consolidate all of these amazing resources that we have throughout the city, and you can come to your local community learning center and get the information you need to become a homeowner.
From the beginning of the administration, Vice Mayor Kearney has made it very clear that her top priority is homeownership, and within that, Black homeownership. And in order to address the problem, we have to understand the problem. I'm so grateful for her leadership leading these town halls so we can hear directly from the community so we can fashion solutions that work for the community and the city.